So the humanness of our presidents, some of them, I fully understand them, that they are not normal. They are actually traumatized psychologically, to an extent that some may even need medical attention. I'm not joking. We may end up with one or two of them in psychiatric wards because of them. Because if you should right now sit down with them and ask them to relate what happened to them, what were the wars like, you may discover that they've not gone through it. Some are on drinking, some are on drugs, some are on heavy suppression tablets, high blood pressures, and etc., dealing with the trauma. And while they're dealing with their trauma, they're running a country. So you have patience in some certain places. Some of them are repenting, some of them are growing up, some of them are coming to some of them have dealt with it. So it's a rehabilitation. Government, for me, is a rehabilitation center for military juntas.
I did the first podcast with you online, which was quite amazing. And now I'm glad that you are doing this. You are away from South Africa. I'm away from Tanzania. We're doing this in Uganda, which is quite fascinating for me. How is your experience in Uganda?
Uganda is a beautiful, beautiful place with lots of history that needs to be tapped into. I think Uganda unites Kenya, Tanzania, Congo, Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe. There's lots of history here. The clan names that I found here and the royal setup, actually it's a science which we can use for the unification of Africa. Because if all clans, 52 or 54 of them, can identify each other in Uganda, then we only need 54 clan leaders who set up the parliament. And the politicians can disappear. We've never known who they are. And the country can be back to the hands of those that own it. I think it's a solution on the royal unification using our clan name sciences. Then it stops all the war. Because in each country, there are other clans that are in other countries. And I think it creates quite a unifying factor where we're able to trace our ancestral common ground.
I like that because it's so unfortunate that most African countries, they would have things such as nepotism. Rather than using tribes to unify themselves, they use them to divide themselves, and they'll just be asking, hey, what's your last name? Then the moment you tell them your last name, they start judging you because now they know which tribe you come from, which is quite a disappointment. And I mean, I think it goes back to Tanzania and what Nyerere did, because right now you can hardly identify people by their tribe in the country, right? In as much as they're tribes and we value them, we appreciate them, we respect the culture, but we're not using that to divide against each other.
Very important, very important. Again, what has built strong monarchs and strong civilizations and dynasties is clarity on history. So in as much as the unification of tribes and blurring the line of which tribe are you, but ultimately that identity at a personal level, at a family level, then at a national level, at a continental level. And many people would confuse diversity does not mean enmity. Diversity can simply mean variety. And I think life is best appreciated in the variety of culture. Imagine when you see the Zulus dance, you see the Maasai dancing, then you see the Bembas and the Karangas and the Tsongas, bringing all this beauty. And you can only preserve that at a cultural level because then that's where norms and rituals are conducted, where these ones say, we don't dance like this. Like in the Uganda space, you have a name of a tribe, you have the function in the royal palace, then you also have the sound of their drum, and so you even preserve the sound of the drum. If you taka, 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 then you know what kind of a sound. And I think that's a military strategy to the highest order that we could actually use that as a means of communication. Then you know when you hear taka, 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 it's this one. When you hear ta, taka, ta, taka, it's this one. This is Morse code. And for you as young people, maybe this is where I miss you sometimes because you're in a hurry to discard things because you don't understand them. So it's no longer just about a drum. It's a siren. It's information. The talking drum of the Nigerian, the guy who beats it would actually say a message to the king who knows the sound of the drum and interpret it in words. So there are enemies at the gate. Please start running. And it's all sending a sound, and that's it. So to me, these are sciences which might look very primitive, but if you look at them very well, these are high-end technological decodings of ancestral knowledge system, which we can manipulate in 1,000 ways.
And do you feel disappointed the fact that, I mean, most of us young people do not understand these messages and our culture, and we discard them easily?
In fact, you have acclimatized your ears to other types of noises. It's not that you cannot hear them. If we can just switch off some few gadgets and we put on your right diet and we sit in a space of certain silences, actually these sounds will begin to come back to you, because your memory, your ancestral memory is generational. It stores things even if you don't use them, but the day you need them, you may find that they've been safely stored. So we eat food, we walk places, we smell forests, we hear music, we bath in rivers, so that we awaken our ancestral memory. And once it's woken up, it comes with its gifts, it comes with its potentials, it comes with its frustrations, unsolved businesses, it comes with its talents, it comes with its positioning in the culture. All of a sudden, the person, it also creates a good environment around you to attract you to the things that are in sync with you. That's maybe what we're trying to say when you talk about consciousness, that maybe this word is being used loosely on the Pan-African space, consciousness. And I don't think people understand consciousness. They've taken it as an intellectual exercise, that I'm woke. But how can you be woke in your brain, but you're not woke on your taste buds? You're not woke in your ears. You're not woke in your eyes. You're not woke in your nose. You're not woke in your skin. The forehead does not know you. You don't know it. So wokeness for me is actually living in the abundance of activated ancestral memory, which then connects you with the past and makes you a library for the future.
One of the things you said on our first episode was that African life is an expression of spirituality, and that's powerful. Can you explain more on that? Because I think it's something that people need to understand.
As contrasted to Eurocentric religious experiences, which are time-based, which are church-based, which are venue-based. You must go to church on a Sunday morning and come here once a week or twice a week, depending what kind of church you're coming to. Then you practice the godly within those spaces. Apparently, you cannot speak anyhow in church. You can't do certain things because you're in a holy space. Fair and fine. You come to African space, we might not necessarily have a place. We have places, sacred places. In other words, there are places for the rain, there are places for disease, there are places for war, there are places, and we access these spaces to speak to us what we want to hear on a spiritual realm. So whether we're eating, it's a spiritual exercise. Whether drinking water, it's a spiritual exercise. When we shake each other's hands, the words we exchange, if you expand those words and hear what we are saying, it's a spiritual exercise. When we sleep, it's a spiritual exercise. Please go and talk to those that are in the shadows of the night. Bring us messages in the morning when you come back. In the morning when you wake up, what did they say in the world of the sleeping? That's Mangwana and Shona, for example. When we get married, it's a spiritual exercise. The unification of families, the cutting of animals that goes in there, the blending of the spiritual families. You're not marrying an individual, you're marrying a whole family, you're marrying a tribe. So this is so and so, this is the aunt, this is the uncle, this is what, and the spirituality right there. So when I say it's a daily expression, therefore you don't have the schizophrenic mindset that says, now I'm in church. And after church, now put off those clothes, take off that jacket. Now I'm in the world. So you end up having this schizophrenic mindset that tiptoes in two spaces. And to me, spirituality can't be that. You are the bodies, the temples of the omnipotent. You are the open letters that must be read by anybody that is passing on the side of the streets. The spirit lives in you. You are in him, he is in you. I don't know how much people read this Bible. I don't think they understand it at all. Because if we understood what that meant, therefore, I don't even dwell in houses that are built by men. I dwell in houses that are built for myself, and your bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit. Now, you look at the depth of that. Who needs to go to another building? Who needs to go to another shrine when actually the biggest of all shrines and temples and centers of spirituality is the inside part of you that must be conscious to where it is coming from, where it is, and where it is going, particularly what it must be doing in the now. to transform the future and correct the past. So we may think that it's politics. To me, it's spirituality, because politics plays on lost power in spirituality. When we lost our land, we lost our spirituality. We lost our connectivity to the piece of land. Therefore, we can't do politics without politics of spirituality. Politics of spirituality restores land to its rightful owners so that they can practice their rituals and lifestyles and culture in their own space. So and you cannot talk about economic progress, academic progress, entertainment progress, if you are not talking about people being indigenous and being in control of their means of production. That speaks to their present feeding, that speaks to the excess going for the market. That's business. And without land, you have no home, you have no business, you have no road, you have no tree, you have no grass, you have no house, you have no mineral, you have no water, you have no mountain, you have no river in a flat in town. You have no vegetables. So all other forms of political commentary that are void of land conversation are not political conversations. They are a circus, a mascot of European mischief. The only politics we need is the politics of land. Hence I say you must have two wives. The first wife is land. The second wife is the one who gives you children. And if you don't have the first wife, you will abuse the second wife. And instead of fighting over second wives or girlfriends, we need to fight over the first wife, who is land. Men right now would kill each other for a wife, kill each other for a girlfriend. But who amongst us Africans right now are as passionate about land than they are about women?
That's powerful. Man, I think we can see the fear that the US people have right now, the US government, over Chinese buying their land.
The Chinese are not just here to expand land issues. They are here to reorganize a population preservation of their own nation in other countries. They're overpopulated now, so they're pushing some of them here. Not only that, it's also a 30-year plan to take over certain parts of Africa. So the prisoners that are being sent here to come and work, they don't bring their wives. They come alone. So of the 153, 400,000 Chinese that have come with the 3, 4, 5, 11 billion investment, that number could be much more. All of them are bachelors. Only few executives have brought their wives, but the rest are prisoners and bachelors who now are making children in Africa. And these children will be Chinese and African, but being African, these children are Chinese, who are going to be educated in our system, who will receive scholarships to go back to China and come back and become presidents and ministers in Africa. And by right, they are citizens because we're born here. It's a strategy. In 30 years' time, you will call me back. I hope I'll still be able to talk. And you will recite this when you have the first vice president, the first minister, the first president in one of the African countries being a crossbreed between Chinese and African.
I mean, are we seeing this happening?
Go to villages and you see those children running up and down. In Zimbabwe, we have them. In Uganda, you have them. In Kenya, you have them. It's insignificant now. Let's not talk much about it. There are women right now who are pregnant with Chinese kids. There are some who are breastfeeding Chinese kids. And it's going. It's going. We saw it in Ghana, the Rawlings, a colored guy. How did a colored man end up as a president of a country? There's nothing. We saw it in Botswana. How did Seretse Khama become the president when he's a colored? His mother is British, and his father was Tswana, and the father was a president. 2 generations later, he became the president himself. So it's nothing funny. This is exactly what is happening.
That's mind blowing. I mean, we are really seeing a shift in global power and dominance. And talking about that, 2 African countries have joined BRICS, now making 3.
Yeah.
And the African Union has also joined G20.
You see, if Africa Union should change its name, it must be called A54. Why must it always be about Africa joining and Africa not uniting? We want to join G20. Why? What is it that G20 can do which you can do? What is it that World Bank is doing which you can do? What is it that BRICS is doing which you can do? So the real problem is that BRICS is taking away the most powerful African countries and giving them legitimacy in their organizations. By the time Africa wants to unite, it will have only the minority poor, whose voice will be inaudible to the muscle of BRICS, Euro dollar, and American dollar. But if Africa right now under OAU or under AU or under COMESA or under SADC or under Africa Union, I don't care. Stop having organizations that speak politics. We need an AU bank, Africa Union Bank. We need an AU stock exchange. We need an AU passport. We need an AU academic curriculum. We need an AU military organization that can quieten wars on the continent. We need an AU health system that can deal with pandemics. We need an AU entertainment center that does movies and our own sports. We need an AU that is sensitive to the spirituality of the African people. Unfortunately, the AU we have right now is just a body that is writing protocols, writing papers and poems and speeches for world organizations. But when you look into the agenda of AU, right now I don't hear them talking about Niger. I don't hear them talking about the war in Congo. The only time I heard them was in Zimbabwe 2 weeks ago when they were talking about monitoring sanctions. How do you want to monitor sanctions if you don't know how to monitor war? How do you want to come and talk to people how they should vote instead of how to silence guns? So, World Union, which is United Nations, beautiful model. They have the WHO that deals with health. They have the Security Council that deals with war, with guns, and they call them peacekeepers. And you have the protocols, you have the immigrations, you have what the membership has value because it adds critical components to that unity. So, and I think Africa Union, we should stop apologizing for anything. We need 50,000 or 100,000 soldiers from each country in Africa to right now meet at a common place, cost-free, because each government must pay for its own soldiers. And we have an African army. And we march into Congo tomorrow morning and we silence the war. We march into Sudan, we silence the war. We march into Niger, we march into the Fulanis and the ISIS and the Boko Harames. There's no way you can say you are a continent that must function as a country and you don't understand and appreciate the importance of security. So we need, again, to have one army. I kept that one for last. Because then you can never talk peace unless you are ready to talk about war.
That's true. Because, I mean, for example, if you talk about, nuclear weapons, right? It's like we produce most of the materials used to manufacture it, and yet we don't have it.
Yes, on that, you may have the minerals, but the manufacturing is not controlled by you. The manufacturing is controlled by the global West, who even will not allow you to activate uranium, because once it is active, it can be used as a bomb, but it can be used for electricity. So they can't trust you to come up with your own solutions, even on things that help you. You will not be allowed to do that. Why? Because the sovereignty of Africa is not African. We say we are sovereign, but the people who control the policies, which either enhance our living or downgrades it, those principles are not African principles. Those are world principles. Those are protocols of the United Nations and NATO's, the Security Councils and stuff like that. So our sovereignty cannot even solve problems. South Africa, for example, was told to stop using coal for electricity. and etc. And the whole country is in load shedding. But the Americans who said we must not use coal are buying the coal to fuel their own coal stations. Now you look at these double standards of what they might want to call green energies. They are the ones who write the policies for green energies, like America, but they're not a member of the Green Energy Treaty. Then who are you lying to and who are you cheating? So the liberation of Africa does not only come with political conversations, it's going to come with an economic revolution where we begin to understand money, sponsor ourselves, change some of our military budgets into innovation, manufacturing, and producing. Then you are solving employment. Then immediately people have cash flows. You have a better tax base from where you can collect your taxes. With the taxes, then you can improve infrastructure. But government, in many times, they've jumped the stages. They're in a hurry to make people happy. So what do you do for them? You build them a road. That goes where? Do they have cars? Do they have, the road is for what? Which one is better for you to have a road or for you to have a job that can afford you a car and open a business that you can then pay tax, and the money for tax, the government can build a better road for you. But the road finds you with a home, with a car, and with a better school around you. So the whole issue of infrastructure sometimes is just the pressure from the common people who say, we want services, we want services. So you end up having to build people houses. I don't want any government to build me a house. I want to get my own business. I want to do my own job. And I want to build a house to the spec that I want to build the house. So these photocopied two-roomed houses for people, it's not dignity, it's disrespect. And again, when you don't fully understand how to create a sustainable community by activating means of production, the availability of water, the availability of employment, industries, the availability and flexibility of government policies to entrepreneurship and innovation, creation of new ideas. How easy is it for you as a young man to have a new idea right now and walk through the bureaucracy and have that thing on the shelves in the shops? You must still find, even if it is a herb that your grandfather has been using for 200 years, they would want to test it. They will put laws of how it must be done. And you spend 6 years, actually the process now is 5 years, 5 years to have one pattern of a drug on the shop. It will take you 5 years. So now you want people to employ themselves and empower themselves to have a new technology right now and get it patented into the shelves. It may never make it. There are people who have discovered cars that use water. Those patents are still sitting. They will not even be allowed because those that are running petrol cars cannot risk losing their business because a cheaper technology has come in. So what do? They buy the technology and put it on their shelf and many times wait for you to die. And then they activate those things. So you're dealing with an African young man like yourself who begins to understand the global conversation. And now when you begin to have a political conversation with your friends, it's no longer an issue of let's change, let's vote, let's what? Changing what? Voting what? Because the people you're putting in power are not aware of the system. They will get into these offices and do exactly the same. You're exchanging hyenas with foxes and wonder why sheep are always disappearing.
And so where exactly are we going wrong? Is it that the West are trying to hold us back? Is it that our leaders, because I think these are things that they're very easy for leaders to understand that they need to do, but yet they're not doing them.
It's an iPhone that you bought, young man, but you have just downloaded a Samsung software. And all the good files of Android, your phone is reading them as error. Error. It can't even function. The phone is brand new. You just put an Android system on an Apple hardware. They don't talk to each other. The African software, the African spirituality, or the African hardware, either way, that is not talking to the colonial software that has been put on the African hardware, or the African hardware which is being put on the African software. Doesn't matter to me. But there's no conversation between the one who is producing the raw material and the one who is selling the final product. There's no communication. This one wants to buy it for $80 a kg uranium, and he is selling it at $200. And this one is saying, now come back here. Bring my $140, $120 that you didn't bring back. The one says, I don't want. And this one says, no, I'm no longer going to be selling to you. I'll be selling directly. This one says, no, you can't. Even when you sell it directly, they must still keep it the same price for me only. But for everybody else, sell it at 200. This is the French-Niger conflict that you have. Then you sit down and ask, for the past so many years, how many tons of uranium have been taken out of Niger? At 80 cents. So per every kg that left this country, how many dollars has Niger lost? It goes into billions. Is France by any chance willing to admit that it has been stealing? No. Are they willing to let go so that Niger can start afresh? No. Are they willing to bring the infrastructure to Niger so that Niger can benefit from uranium as a final product in terms of electricity? No. What do you want Africa to do, France? We want Africa to prosper. How do you want them to prosper? By making sure that we keep their resources and their banks in France here, and we only give them money which is their own tax money as loans and at a good interest for us. So what has the interest of Niger? Nigers have no interests. What are the interests? The only interests that matter are the interest of America and the interest of France. Now you're talking about African development with that picture, that Barclays Bank, Standard Bank, FNB Bank, Total, BP, Shell, all the high volumes of transactions that are happening in the country, they're happening on a side economy that is colonial, and the local government does not have access to that. They can only wait for tax, and taxes are on less than 20 to 30% of the total. And once the money in the bank is in the bank, Barclays South Africa, Barclays Harare, Barclays Uganda, Barclays Britain, monies are being transacted legally on paper. Barclays South Africa is allowed to pay Barclays Britain. It's allowed. There's policies in government which tell you how that must be done. When were these policies written? 1920, 1930. Who wrote them? The settlers. Why did they write them? Because they were subjects of the British monarch. So how did you write them? We wrote them in such a way that when you make money in your local country, you're able to move money out of that country where you're working and pay your taxes and pay your allegiance to the one who has brought you here. So what is the banking system? The banking system is a custodian of collecting cash from local people and moving it out of that country legally and support the principals who own these banks. Now we begin to talk as who owns these banks. So is it possible that if we should collect $1 billion in Uganda from various businesses and that money goes to the bank, how much of that money then makes its way to the government? So you are beginning to understand politics, young man, that politics is economics. Those that hold the money will actually determine the politics. Our governments are fighting over bones. The real flesh and meat is not eaten here. Go to Dubai, go to Mauritius, go to Virgin Islands, go to Swedish banks, go to British banks, and you see how many trillions are constantly being siphoned out of the African economy legally.
Talking about France and West Africa, are we now seeing a second wave of independence?
And independence is an understatement. I would rather be talking about a revolution. The 6 countries that we have seen in the Francophone space, I would say it loud and clear. It's different this time around. People are actually supporting the coups, so to speak. Not because people support the coups, but people are just fed up with the colonial stooges who have been sitting in offices and every weekend they're in Paris taking pictures, doing groceries, and basically they're custodians, supervisors, class prefects to make sure that the French establishment, the McDonald's and the KFCs that are in your country are able to operate peacefully. That's why we put you as a president, say, to protect our interests. What are your interests? Our interests are your businesses that are in your country, that are running, that are directly paying us Our interests are your raw materials that we are going to get for no money, for a song, at cheap price, so that we can fuel our factories and industries this side. Those are our interests. Because if we don't get these raw materials, our people will lose their jobs. And when our people lose their jobs, they will turn against us. But no one bothers to ask these people who are taking the raw materials, do they have the same jobs? So are you saying that your people are more important than our people? Unfortunately, France has interest. China has interests. Britain has interests. America has interests. Except Africans have no interests in their own economies. They have no interest in their copper. That's why they send it away as it is. They have no interest in their uranium. That's why they send it as it is. They have no interest in their iron ore. Send it as it is. They have no interest in their uranium. So when you as local people don't have an interest in your own interests, in your own revenues and materials, until other people from elsewhere will even send soldiers in your country because they can't trust you to protect their interests. And 15,000 soldiers right now sitting in Niger and saying we are not going because France's interests are on the ground here. Our embassy is not closing because we must make sure that the uranium keeps on going. Even if poor people in Africa will benefit from that, it must benefit us first before it can benefit you. And it may never benefit you. That's why the oil pipes of Nigeria are passing through villages where poverty is worst. British Petroleum. And Nigeria has to import back its own fuel as a processed product at a price 3 to 4, 5 times more than they send it out of the country. So tell me, Nigeria, after 60 years of mining oil, why up to date you don't have a processing and a refinery to purify your oil and sell petrol to the world? No, those mines don't belong to us. The government signed a document with the British government, and it's in the Constitution. It's in the law that Britain will mine this place for the next 99 years. I don't know how long is the lease. So you have the same law that you vote leaders into, and when they get into this law, the Western world always make sure the person going onto that chair understands the law, which protects us. So the revolutionaries that are coming in now seem to have poor knowledge of law. They seem to have a good understanding of the community. It might end up causing Africa to move into a space of anarchy, lawlessness, but even that law itself is foreign to us. And until African leaders understand that now is time not to be talking politics, it's time to be talking economics. If I could give an advice to every African leader, before you leave parliament, build industries, build transport infrastructures, own buses as government, own manufacturing companies as government, own railway lines as government, create these parastatals, these non-government organizations, but that are directly funded by the government. Because the government is the only one who has money. You cannot wait for the bank. The bank wants sureties, and the poor people on the ground have poor land. They cannot use that as surety. So the only surety we have is the government itself. So the Chinese business, all the things that you see coming out of China are sponsored by the government of China. How many trillions are they making now? They're a superpower of manufacturing. It takes a government to have a direct intention. And again, if you look into the Constitution, the government must not be seen to be doing any business. Your job is that of regulations. You must not be tampering with business. And who is tampering with business? The same multinational companies. They don't even want you as government to come closer to where the money is made. You sit there and write the rules. And when you don't like the rules, we bribe your parliamentarians to come and vote the wrong thing in parliament, and it will be passed while you are sitting there. You are always in power, but not in control.
I mean, it's so frustrating, and I don't know how we can contain it, because with your understanding of what's going on, it's like all the leaders in Africa you see, you'll just be like, they're just puppets. They're not really doing anything. And it's like, why are they even in office in the first place? And so it's good that now we are seeing the revolution happening in the West African countries. And I don't think they're finished. I think we have a few more countries left.
The only survival of the presidents are those who are going to hear what I'm saying. Only those who are going to survive. Put aside your guns, put aside your military mindset. Start an economic revolution. You may just survive. Because this issue of 5 years election, we now know for the past 60 years, it's a waste of time. People have, even this thing of in democracy, it's a stupid concept. Because if democracy was for free, then why did we fight for it? If the white people knew that we needed democracy, then why did you colonize us? Why didn't you bring democracy in the first place? In fact, it is Africa now that is teaching the world democracy. Because you oppressed us, and in some cases we are still working in our countries and we have not killed you. We are giving you freedom, which you were not giving us when you were in power. So who is democratic now? Is it the one who was oppressing, or the one who is free and is giving you access to your own freedom also? So African democracy has actually liberated colonialists who were trapped in their world of supremacy and could not even practice democracy because they were not democratic themselves. So Africans beginning to understand who we are, where we are coming from, brewing and breeding a new breed of politicians who have different conversations, putting these politicians in positions of influence where we can influence policy. We are able to start stopping fighting over colonial papers of voting and elections and all this useless time-wasting exercise. The real exercise is activating the economy. And once people have the economy in their hands, let me make it very simple. Own your means of production and own your value chains in the means of production. It's only when you begin to get into manufacturing that you don't need to worry about employment. You don't need to worry about the middle economy. Because once there is ownership of land and there is exploitation of that land, not only in agriculture, but in housing, in farming, in dams, in mining, in etc. And once the land is in the hands of the people are going to create for themselves work. And with the work, people are going to improve themselves, create their own businesses. Government will never lose money when people are doing business. Because then you have a bigger tax base than taxing only a few individuals. Now you have created more economy at the bottom. And through that economy, you can be able to create a broader tax base. And tell me, 5 people give you 5,000 rand, 5,000 shillings each, or 1 million people give you 100 shillings each. Who has more money? So you cannot focus at 5 people who are going to give you 10. I have 50,000. Okay, I'll have 42 million people. Give me $1. Give me a shilling each. I'll still beat you with my hands down. So why is it that our governments are not looking at investing in the people? Because they are looking at short-term profit with the people that are already in business. This is long-term. This is short-term. And because it's short-term, I'm only here for 5 years. And you're going to vote me out. So there's no way I can sit around and have a plan for this country, which is 150 years. And I will not be here in 150 years. So our government ministers and presidents are busy signing treaties behind the doors for 2.5, 3-year plan, 5-year at most, and etc. I mean, look at Zimbabwe at one time. There's a dam that was commissioned to be built in 1912. 1912. Only 2 years ago did President Mnangagwa start building that dam. Because every government that comes in, it's a long-term project. It won't be finished in 5 years. It might not be finished in 6 years. Real infrastructure development is not a short-term program. It's a long-term program. But when you have a leader who is a short-term in office, and you as a country are expecting long-term solutions, you'll keep on changing leaders and multiplying the pace of long-term projects will never be reached. Will never be reached. Because every leader that comes in, it's 5 years. Some of them, you elect them into power on the first year. The second, and they're paying the people that put him in power. On the second year, their friends are coming closer. On the third year of their office, they're now thinking, what programs can I possibly start? So they do a survey. After the survey, on the fourth year, they get a team to start researching on the projects. On the fifth year, they are too busy doing campaigns.
Elections.
For the next election. If they get into power on the other year, then they are starting to do financing. On the seventh year, now they are doing procuring and tendering. On the eighth year, possibly, if you are lucky, you see the first bag of cement going on site. And on the ninth year, they are already planning for campaigns. They will not be here again. And okay, let's say he gets out of office. The new guy comes and say, that last project was not important. It's not a priority. May I want to start my own. There you have in government offices files and files of projects that are approved. Some of them 1% done. Some of them 2% done and stopped. Some of them have 50% roads that have been built. And it just gets somewhere and it stops. And you wonder, what happened? Did you not plan this road to be 10 kilometers? Why is only 2 kilometers? And it has been here for the past 3-4 years. The director who was on top, when he arrived, says, no, let's move this money. It's not a priority. Over there. So we don't have a continuous, seamless plan, implementation, and delivery because it's always interrupted by political leaders. Here's the solution. Change your political figures on top. When it comes to permanent secretaries and directors in departments, keep those as long as possible because they have the intellectual property of the heartbeat of the organization. That's why Fauci in America could say, I worked with George Bush Sr. I worked with George Bush Jr. I worked with Bill Clinton. I worked with Obama. I worked with Trump. Now, how many presidents is that? And this is the permanent secretary in the Department of Health. So the whole IP and the health of America over the past 5 to 6 presidents sits with one man who is accountable for, he must be accountable for what he's doing because the IP is being passed. Whether the agenda that was started is for us or against us, it's progressive, I think we can leave that for another day. But the idea of keeping a constant person in charge of information, whether it is public works or it is health or it is education. And here at this level, that's where you plant the long-term project. So that when each president comes in, he is already informed. We are finishing the 10-kilometer road. Don't tell us.
We're not going to change that.
We are finishing this. So even if you put a cat or a dog on American government, the government will run. Because there is president, first in command, there is second in command, third in command, fourth in command, and the system will protect the dog on top. Because it is seamlessly holding the long-term plan, which must be implemented. So when a president comes and he was told that in 2025, we're going to be striking country X, and they've been sitting here planning the war for the past 7-10 years. And on the 9th year, you are elected as a president. There is nothing you will do to stop the permanent secretary strategic plan for the country. So I told Mr. President, you don't have to think through this one, just press the button. And it's done. So we need a system that is seamless to that level, where African politicians could understand the intertwined relationship between economics and politics and empower the people to rule themselves. They will not forget you. People are afraid of dealing with powerful people because they're afraid they will eliminate me. But we cannot love you because of poverty. And poor people have no choices.
I mean, I think one of the challenges that we face is that every president that comes in, they come with their playbook and they're like, these are the things I want to do because I want people to remember that I'm the one who started them and finished them. When their term is over, they haven't finished it, the next person comes in, same story. And it's like you have projects that have just started 5% in, and they're left like it's.
If
as
they
they're
had
done.
started and the money is still there and the material is still there, we'll be saying maybe we can continue. Most likely when those projects stop, no one stops to ask, so what happened to the budget? What happened to the machinery? What happened to the materials? I mean, this was supposed to be 10 million project and only 200,000 was put. So what happened to the rest? So that money is somewhere. Maybe the money flew away. Maybe the money is stuck somewhere. Maybe the money is in someone's account, or maybe it's being eaten somewhere.
Or it's in their home.
Maybe that material actually built his house back in the village. Maybe that road was diverted and he has put a tarred road in front of his own house. The plight of Africa, where you eat money, where you must build a clinic, where your own mother and grandmother will get tablets for high blood pressure. And you are given money to build that clinic, which you protect and preserve your own family. And you eat that money. You eat the money for the road that rushes your own mother to the hospital. There's nothing that can be as evil as a politician who eats public funds. Because you're not only destroying the public, you're destroying yourself and you're destroying your own family. These are your relatives. They need the services. And then you eat the money. And then you buy a 4x4 so that you can run on dust roads that have potholes. Instead of taking your 4x4 and fixing the road so that other drivers and borders can ride also nicely.
The late President Magufuli of Tanzania said that economic war is the hardest of all wars. He said it's harder than a war of guns. And I think we are seeing that almost everywhere.
It takes a different software. That's the problem. For military war, we go to a camp. We roll on the floor. We do push-ups. We do shoot up stuff. This is how you get a grenade. How to break guns. You train. 6 months, 1 year. Then you pick up a gun in your sleep. Now talk about the economic war. Why would Magufuli say that? Because you are moving a soldier who was trained to shoot, to blast, to detonate grenades, and you put him on a balance sheet. This is the reality of African politicians who walk from the bush with whatever kind of education they received. This one story. Then you move this entire system into they come as political people into the economic boardrooms. So there's frustration as to why things are not changing. Because the very understanding of how the system is wired, they never went on the shooting range to train as economic soldiers. Where if you are going to be doing a revolution on the economic table,
I think we can proceed. I think it's recording.
The revolution on the economic table needed the same discipline and training that we did for political liberation. And maybe let's give you the full war. After we have fought the political war and won, then we discover we have an economic war which must be fought, we must win. Then we'll discover there's an academic war of education that we must fight and win. Then we discover there's an agricultural war we must fight and win. Then sports and entertainment, we must first fight and win. And lastly, spirituality. So I've actually designed for you, your generation, the 7 major pillars that the modern young people, you need to understand this battle. Or else, your fathers stood up after political war. Oh, now we need economic war. We don't need to go that route. Let's activate all the 7 of them and let's implement.
So with the coups that we have seen, I think that's the first stage. Then comes in the next stage of, running the country and creating, fighting the economic war. Are the current revolutionary leaders in West Africa prepared to be able to do that?
You can never be prepared for a revolution, unfortunately. The disadvantage we have is that the educated young people are drowning in the Mediterranean. These military leaders who are coming into space, the young people, the technocrats that they need, who can implement the project, they're either too old or they're on the Mediterranean. So now you have the political environment that is conducive. The question is, do you have the academic, the economic, the agriculturalist, and the industrialists who can now fit into these vacuums? Because the danger is you take over. You chase away the French, you chase away the British, who are manufacturing your sugar and your bread and your peanut butter, because you abandoned your old ways of life as Africans. So bread will go on scarcity on the market. Salt will go on scarcity on the market. Because the people who have been supplying these things is not you, but the same people that you're chasing away. So you're going to end up with a hunger strike. And once people get into the rampage of hunger, you're back again. This leader is not good. Let's change him. Let's put another one. And this has been the vicious cycle. So the real war is entrepreneurship, putting means of production in the hands of young people, creating conducive environments for young people to function, and grow the economy from the bottom. You as government put preferential procurement policies that encourage indigenous people. It takes longer, but it is sustainable. And it is fully owned by local people. Because right now, even if we talk about uranium, let uranium stop. Uranium stops. Are your universities right now equipped to build a laboratory, a station for uranium? Is your government prepared to do that? Where do you get the machinery? Where do you get this? So instead of just stopping the uranium, which is giving you the money for now, you may want to sell it at a competitive price, but commit that of every dollar that of per watt goes into the full beneficiation of that resource that you have. So whether it is Zambia for their copper, it is Zimbabwe for their lithium, it is Niger for their uranium. The question is, are you just selling these raw materials? And if you stop selling them, how are you going to have the money that you were having to run the government? But if you should be selling it, what are you doing in the proceeds of that? You're using the money for the proceeds to spend on other things instead of investing on the resource that can actually grow itself. We need to run governments like businesses. Then we'll stop being borrowers and putting our hands in the air. Because the policies that we have put in place to allow resources to go out of the country are the very solution to the needs of the masses at the bottom. You are busy selling raw materials. These are crying for jobs. And you as a leader, you can't think to say the raw materials that I'm selling, if I put them here, I could create a factory that creates the jobs. So it sounds like the economic war needs a totally different type of a gun. We need people who understand not only European economics, Western economics, Chinese economics, but also African economics. Because the pyramids were built in Sudan and in Egypt. We don't know what economics they were using. Benin was built with all the complications of that city. We don't even have the architectural plan and what economics they used. The Great Zimbabwe. So the question of barter, so when I give you something, you give me something. So if I give you my gold, I can't be buying food from you because you've asked me to plant flowers in my house so that I can sell you the flowers. And with the money for gold, then I must buy food to come and eat at home. That's why I say always plant what you eat and eat what you plant. Because you might think as a country that you're in business. Meanwhile, you're running around the same circle. You're busy shipping out coffee. Who eats coffee for breakfast and lunch? And with the money that comes for coffee, now you must buy food. So why not just remove this coffee and plow food that you can eat? This is the mindset that we have. No, the GDP, this affects the GDP. But where's the GDP in my stomach? So if people that are feeding forests, feeding flowers, feeding coffee, and things that are inedible, because they are of high demand in the West, they will bring forex Who owns that forex? Who is producing? Who is banking that money? Whose land is it? Are those people eating? Consolidate your thinking as an African nation.
It's mind-blowing. And it's like, Africa was the least of the continent you're supposed to be having these conversations. Conversations of borrowing money, conversations of, fighting the economic war. It's like we have everything to our advantage, and yet it seems like most leaders are losing the war. I mean, have they even chosen to fight the war, though? That's the question.
They chose to fight the war, but their mindset was not to liberate everybody. It was to liberate themselves. I am going to use a very weird illustration. So you sit up straight. In a psychological ward where diagnosis can be made over the effects of abuse, various forms of manifestations happen over and above the physical, if it was a physical abuse, there is also so there's a physical abuse itself. There's also got emotional abuse. There could also be mental abuse, which can manifest itself in many ways, where you can either become too abusive also to others, or you can become suicidal, or you can have an altered personality. So when you look at our political leaders, there's a psychology that needs to be set down and discussed. These people fought. These people were at war. These people buried their brothers and sisters. These people went through trauma of the highest orders. And no one bothers to check their mental condition after abuse and how to deal with trauma. So there is individual trauma, which I can face as a person. There is family trauma, when something happens in the family that shakes everybody. There's community trauma, and there's national trauma. Now we're dealing with continental trauma, a reverberation of trauma. So maybe we need a bit of psychologists here who can say, what are the processes when you are dealing with a traumatized person? A traumatized person by hunger will buy 16 houses, 25 cars, 45 pens and shoes and things that he never afforded. Why? Because now he's got there. So a person who is coming from the trauma of poverty, when they have things, they lose everything because they're trying to compensate on what they never had. So now you have 10 cars. So how many can you drive at a time? Can you drive one? Then you find some of these presidents, you grab a house there, you grab a house there, you grab a house there, get a car there. How much money do you have now? No, I'm sitting on 2 billion. 2 billion? You won't even finish eating it. With 3, 4, 5 plates of food a day. You can afford any hospital you want in the world. You can stay in any house you want in the world. But no, 2 is not enough. How much now? I'm on 8. How much now? I'm on 15. And you go. And then after that, we hereby announce the said passing away of.
Gone.
Then what was life all about? What was that drama all about? Only to end up right here. So maybe also issues of satisfaction when it comes to trauma, when you have gone past those levels of accumulation, and then one morning you wake up and go, man, how can I be ordering snow from Europe to celebrate Christmas? How can I be taking 25 million and giving it to France to repair a church? How can I send and hire an aeroplane to go and shop for caviar in Italy and olives in France and then come back home for dinner? How can I do that? So the humanness of our presidents, some of them, I fully understand them, that they are not normal. They are actually traumatized psychologically, to an extent that some may even need medical attention. I'm not joking. We may end up with 1 or 2 of them in psychiatric wards because of them. Because if you should right now sit down with them and ask them to relate what happened to them, what were the wars like, you may discover that they've not gone through it. Some are on drinking, some are on drugs, some on heavy suppression tablets, high blood pressures, and etc., dealing with the trauma. And while they're dealing with their trauma, they're running a country. So you have patience in some certain places. Some of them are repenting, some of them are growing up, some of them are coming to some of them have dealt with it. So it's a rehabilitation. Government, for me, is a rehabilitation center for military juntas. I never thought I would gather confidence to say that.
It's like, what a way to think about it. Who thinks about it that way?
Maybe it's a mindset. It's a mindset that you look at things. I say I'm a watcher. Maybe I've never understood what that means. I stop very often and I look and I look and I observe and I observe and I process 1,000 tons of information in my head, and I process and I think through them, and I begin to hear the voices of reason and common sense, which many people could actually be undermining, but the answers are not far. They're actually in plain sight. There's nothing new that I'm saying that you don't know. That maybe it was not just activated to know. We debrief soldiers so that they can become civilians. Because if you don't debrief them, they will remain in their military. And once they're in a military space, then civilians are something else. They are something else. Yeah. So you can't teach me how to shoot people and kill people, then give me a checkbook and tell me how to manage the Department of Finance. Sometimes our governments fail because we've just put the wrong people in the right places.
Sometimes our government fails because we have put the wrong people in the right places. I don't think when people ask you why you don't run for the office, or if you have thought of one day being the president, I don't think you're surprised when they ask you that question, given the area that you are in. But I watched your interview with DJ Sbu, and one of the things you said was that you don't think you're going to run for the office. I also had a conversation with the great PLO Lumumba from Kenya, and he said the same thing. He said he believes that you don't need to be in office to be able to create change. And here we are talking about leaders who are in office, and some of them are really sick. If you are to be a leader, how do you think you would have been able to avoid that? Which could also shed light on how young people can also avoid such challenges if they are to take offices.
In my case, it is important to gather to myself like-minded people. Running for political office right now, with the quality of politics that we have and the quality of people that we have, it's in some cases a waste of time, because you place yourself in an environment where you are incapacitated to implement the changes that you want. Because this is a revolution, it's not a negotiating table. If I would become a president, I would disrupt everything overnight. And the societies are not ready to be disrupted overnight. You create a civil war.
Chaos.
So would rather start off at the back in terms of information, training, and developing, and starting now to creating parallel structures. That's why I support indigenous business people. Whether you're making shoes, we are doing a garden, or you have started a bank, and I'll support you. Because we want at a time when we get into political spaces to actually be able to make a decision. Says, now from today onwards, no more money is going to that bank, that European bank. We're depositing our money in this African bank here. We're not going to be doing this, but we need those vehicles available and ready. Otherwise, we're going to get ourselves into political power and get stuck with the same laws, which we can influence now from outside, to create the conducive environment. So I think getting into a political space right now is a disadvantage, because then it inhibits you from influencing the same system that you want to change. So even if the government does not want to move faster, we're encouraging the young people to say, get started, do something. Another 5-10 years from now, all old people go where other old people go. And when they go, other people will be in their spaces also. So we don't have to fight for politics and power. If what we want is to change our societies, I think education and the information distribution is one of the most powerful tools we have right now to begin the intellectual revolution towards the preservation of Africa and championing a new future.
And I don't think access to education is the problem though. Because I mean with internet right now, you can learn anything you want to learn, right? I usually say if someone walks up to me and they go like, hey, I want to learn, let's say, video editing. Can you teach me? I'm like, you're not serious about learning. Because if you are, you can literally teach yourself about it, right? Like you can find the resources that you need. And so the question is, I mean, but I think we can now say that young people are really thirsty of change. And we can see this through the revolutions happening in West Africa and their support for the revolution.
The problem we can count on education and pinpoint on education is that in as much as there is so much available education, but why is there so little invention? So it looks like the education is not tapping into the right juices that can actually give us a political revolution. I wish the internet was teaching people how to activate uranium, how to make batteries out of lithium, how to make copper wires. What are the systems that are put in there? So you have what you might call education, but these are just adverts. The real education we need is the science of technology and the IP information. Can you imagine the whole world is drinking Coca-Cola and they still don't know how to make Coca-Cola? So here you are on internet and say, we're learning lots of things. You're learning where is McDonald's, not what is inside the Coca-Cola bottle. We're learning how to edit a video. You're not learning how to make a video, how to make yourself a machine that takes these cameras. So the information you're talking about, young men, yes, they've flooded it with the useless information. They have not exposed the IP information. And the real money is not on retail. The real money is on manufacturing. So maybe if it makes sense to you.
Wow. No, it does. It does. And I think we can agree that those who run businesses are the ones who have true power.
That is a fact. In fact, business is the real politics. The rest is a playfield of poor people. Rich people don't vote for nothing. Their money votes for them. Their money decides for them.
But then again, our governments don't create policies that enable people to become entrepreneurs.
I think we've gone past that because creating entrepreneurs eats into the established businesses. So you'll find mainstream shops are not happy with the people that are selling clothes on the street. Why? Because people are no longer coming to their shops to buy. But who is paying tax? They are paying tax. They are not paying tax. So you begin to have war. And some of these civil wars we find, they're actually local businesses that are instigating the government to silence the smaller businesses so that they can have monopoly. Like in South Africa, we saw that happening. The big shops were compromised when they actually found themselves sponsoring wars with the Somalis and the Ethiopians. And they said it was xenophobia. South Africans are killing Nigerians, are killing Zimbabweans. But when you look further into the pot, you find that there is a foreign hand that is manipulating this thing to get this business removed here so that their businesses can remain where they are because these people are all over their faces. So Africans, again, if we're not careful, will be used for killing each other. While we are shooting and killing each other and we are standing at a graveyard, the white man is at the bank signing the spoils of war.
If you had to give us an action step of how to proceed to win the economic war, how would that look like?
It will be as simple as one government takes one budget. One government takes one budget. Just leave a few little money in critical services like health and education. The full government budget. You just walk up to China and buy factories. Put one in Njinja, put one in Kasese, put one in Munyoro, put one huge industries, whether for manufacturing bamboo, toothpicks. Can you imagine with all our engineers, Africa,
and all the trees.
A toothpick. A whole engineer with 14 years qualifications can make a toothpick. So we need a government intentional intervention, which is backed up, picking up all the professors, all the professional people that are there, package them first. How much capacity do we have in this industry? How much capacity do we have in this industry? Both in terms of skills development and young people coming as an apprenticeship. You have the instrument as government. All that information is in your hands. Okay, we have so many in water, we have so many in etc. This for water, let's see what we can do with the Victoria. So you simply re-establish the function of activating your economy from the grassroots. So stop, take the military budget, take the national budget, get to China, buy factories of processing pineapples into juice at world market level. You're no longer just producing pineapple juice for 2, 3, 4 shops down the road. Buy factories for making, what you call these nice bananas, plantain, and etc., and packaging them for the world.
Big businesses.
Big businesses, big businesses. And with this big business, imagine the amount of employment that comes in immediately. Imagine how this turns into banking. Imagine how this turns into school fees. Imagine how this turns into buying cars, how much it turns into buying houses, and etc. So the cascading of activating the economy where it matters the most is a whole solution. You're sitting here with millions of tons of water, which you don't even know what to do with as Uganda. That water is just flowing to the sea. And it's right here. It's a nuisance, actually. People wish they could cover it and close some of it to put houses. And here's the resource. Of all our engineers in the government and beyond, no one has ever sat down to say, how can we convert Nelubale's water resource into a world-class business? Not only for tourism, but into world-class business. Not only for fisheries, but a world-class business. And all our schools, we go there to study everything else except what we have. So you go to study about William Shakespeare. You don't know how much water is in Nelubale and how deep is it and what are the other uses of water that we can have, and how can you as young people who are sitting next to this resource make sure that you benefit from this resource. Your education never told you that. So we send our children to Caesar, and we're surprised why they've come back as Romans.
I think we go back to what Fanon was saying. Because when you think of all these things, they really don't make sense. It's like we are either really sick people walking around, or everyone has just given up, really, right?
The interesting thing, actually, when you talk like I talk, then the woke ones say, he's mad. It's me now who is crazy. You know that? It's very interesting, isn't it? You tell people this thing is like this, then they look at you and they go, no.
Yeah, that is
You are too highly opinionated. You are mad. And you sit back and you look and you feel sorry for them. But in the fullness of time, I think when we were young, we believed everything. When we got a little bit older, we started questioning everything. Now we are mature. We even question the question. These are levels of inquiry. So when we were young, we would be excited just to hear of something happening and we get excited. But when you got older, wanted to know. We were young, we'd be happy we're eating sweets. Sweets are nice. But when you're older and you see your child eating sweets, you are worried. Who gave you the sweets? It's no longer just about you are eating the sweets. No. Who gave you the sweets? Throw them away. You don't eat sweets. But when you get mature, you now ask the intentions of the one who was giving the sweets. Why did you give my child the sweets? I hope you can unpack that when you are by yourself.
Wow. I mean, that's powerful. And I think it's like in an hour, you'd say things that are like 50 books, right? And the question is, how many of us can really sit down, listen to what you're saying, and really unpack them to the core and understand what you mean? Because most of the time you'll say something and we go like, oh, cool, we take it literally. But then when you sit down and you unpack it, that's when you really understand what you mean. How can people start thinking and seeing the world the way you are?
Those that love materials will end up with things. Those that love power will end up in offices. But those that love wisdom will end up finding the source of those that control, those that have power, and those that have materials.
Please say that one more time.
Those that love materials end up with things, and you can never have enough of things. It's an empty life full of things, and you're empty inside. But another group is looking for power, where they want to control people.
Influence.
And many times they can't control themselves, but they want to influence everybody else. But the real group that we must be looking for as young people, don't look for people with materials. Don't look for people with power. Look for people with wisdom and knowledge. Because wisdom controls power, and power builds materials.
Is this like saying become philosophers?
Philosophy is only a way of saying, I have had enough time to process some certain thoughts for you. And as much as you are a doctor also, and you've had enough time to know how to fix my teeth. As much as you are a mechanic also, say, I've had enough time to learn how to fix your car. So when you come to a philosopher, you're coming to a space where we have had enough time to process theories around the world and come up with conclusions that are not based on thumb-sucking, but on research, experience, spiritual interventions. And your mind is supercharged into spaces of processing thoughts that a common person would find it difficult to do so. Not that they can't think, but sometimes you need tools to think. And many of us have not been privileged with such tools to process big bodies of work.
I think one of the ways to tap into your mind and your knowledge is to read your books.
My books are a bridge. It's a continuous bridge that I've been writing. So you'd find from my old pastoring days to my counseling, youth counseling days, to my transition into the spiritual space, to my political space. So don't locate me in one space. Just look at it as a man in transit. And I'm recording my journey. And right now I'm writing my own Bible, the Gospel according to Maponga J, which is now my ultimate. And
we are really looking forward to that.
Your generation will read it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sir, it's been a pleasure.
Pleasure is mine. Habari zako.
Nzuri sana. Asante sana.
Tunaonana kesho. We'll see you again some other day. Tomorrow is a good day.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate you, young man. You're doing a good job in Tanzania. Send my greetings to all the brothers and the comrades in arms on the Pan-African space and the professor there. Tell them I send them my greetings. But I must come to Tanzania.
You're more than welcome.
Come.